Thank you for listening to this podcast from TRE, Talk Radio Europe, your voice in Spain and around the world. For more information, please visit tre.radio.
Discuss, challenge, inform, comment, viewpoint on Talk Radio Europe.
Giles Brown.
Live comment and discussion with studio guests. Viewpoint.
Good morning. It is Tuesday, the 28th of March. Listen to Viewpoint. Listening to Viewpoint Talk Radio's current affairs program with a panel of guests discussing the issues of the day with you live for the next 2 hours. If you want to get your viewpoint across, then these are the numbers.
To contact TRE, please call 952 78 4000. Email studio@tre.radio. Send us a WhatsApp on +34 645 99 67 95. Message us on Facebook, Talk Radio Europe Official, or tweet us at TRE Talk Radio.
Those are the usual numbers, of course. On today's show, you're discussing a variety of subjects, anything that's crossing your viewpoint as well, of course. We'll be looking at the latest tragic news coming out of the States, gun control. Are the states ever going to do anything about gun control? Also looking at the new head of the SNP, Rishi Sunak, the British government cracking down on antisocial behaviour. Is this a smokescreen? Are some bigger issues that you need to do? Protests in France, protests in Israel, nuclear weapons being moved to Belarus, and anything else. We might even talk about Trump. And I'm delighted to say we're joined in the studio by Rosalind Scott-Gibb. Good morning to you, Rosalind.
Good morning, Giles. Morning, everybody.
Looking forward to your viewpoints a little later on today. But first of all, let's look at the headlines as we always do. Variety make the front. Oh, and Prince Harry's around as well. So let's have a look at the front pages. It had to be Yousaf is the front page of the Metro Scottish edition as it greets the election of Humza Yousaf as the new leader of the Scottish National Party. Humza the First is the headline for the Daily Record, which tells its readers Mr. Yousaf is the first person of colour, Muslim and son of immigrants to become Scotland's First Minister. Daily Telegraph reports on he plans to move the independence movement into what he calls fifth gear, with a pledge to immediately request a new referendum. But an image of the three leadership candidates, the Scotsman's ones, Mr. Yousaf faces an uphill battle to unite what it calls a divided party. The Iron newspaper quotes one of his rivals, Kate Forbes, who says continuity won't cut it. Labour sources have told the Times that they hope to win as many as 20 seats in Scotland at the next election. The Prime Minister is on the front of the Daily Express, vowing to fight every day to stop Scotland leaving what she describes as the precious United Kingdom. Daily Mail leads on the government's plans to make homeowners who rent their properties on Airbnb register on a database, which ministers hope will make it easier for local councils to deal with complaints. The proposals will crack down on what it calls nuisance party houses. The Sun has details about what it calls a 3 strikes and you are out scheme for people it describes as problem tenants. The governor of the Bank of England is quoted in the Telegraph as saying that early retirement is driving up prices and interest rates. It reports that Andrew Bailey described the number of people aged between 50 and 64 who are economically inactive as particularly striking. The Daily Mirror covers the government's plans to give schools and colleges £2.5 billion to upgrade their buildings and open up extra places. Teaching unions have told the paper some facilities are at risk of collapse. Ministers say the new investment will make school buildings fit for the future. Writing in the Daily Mail, the editor of the Jewish Chronicle, Stephen Pollard, says Benjamin Netanyahu has prolonged the crisis in Israel by delaying his plans to reform the judiciary. Thousands of protesters have taken to the streets in recent days to demonstrate against the changes. Mr. Pollard says Mr. Netanyahu, who's known as the magician, will not be able to conjure his way out of this situation. Travellers should brace for Holes chaos at Heathrow Airport, according to the Daily Express. It warns that British Airways has cancelled 5% of its flights over the Easter holidays because of a walkout by security staff. The airline has apologised and said it is offering other options or refunds to affected customers. The Guardian leads on coverage of the high court case brought by several celebrities against the publishers of the Daily Mail. The paper quotes Baroness Doreen Lawrence, whose son Stephen was murdered in the 1990s, is telling the court she was betrayed by the Daily Mail. Associated Newspapers is accused of using illegal reporting tactics to obtain stories over 20 years. It dismisses the allegations as preposterous smears. Those front pages again. From the top then, let's see what's top of my paper pile this morning. The SNP turmoil delays dream of independent Scotland. Scottish National Party has elected Husma Yousaf as its new leader. It says the delay independence as policy shifts to longer-term project of converting voters. The Express, PM, I'll fight every day for our quote-unquote precious union. The Guardian leads Doreen Lawrence, I was betrayed by the Daily Mail, a picture of a smiling Prince Harry as it reports the Duke of Sussex, Elton John and other high-profile figures are taking legal action against Associated Newspapers. The Mail says crackdown on nuisance Airbnb party houses. That's their main one. The Times, it says that Times take on the government's anti-social behaviour crackdown focuses on landlords being set to able to evict tenants disrupted to neighbours in rent arrears or who can cause damage within 2 weeks. This is a renters reform bill, and again, picture of Prince Harry on the front. Same picture on the front of the Daily Telegraph. But also the thing is, retiring early is to blame for high rates. Shrinking workforce has pushed up prices and interest, says bank governor. Financial Times leads with investors pour £286 billion into money market funds and scramble for safety. IMF chief warns of stability risk. Meanwhile, strop the boats. Sweller battles to stop a Tory's angry mutiny over her migrants law. There's infighting within the Conservative Party over the government's asylum policy, making it illegal for migrants who arrive in the UK on smaller boats. The Metro says Home Secretary Suella Braverman faced demands by right-wingers in her parties for tougher rules to stop the European Court of Human Rights blocking removals, whilst Tory MPs on the left, were fighting to make her agree more safe route for asylum seekers. The government now appears to have seen off a rebellion. The Mirror's got a David Jason exclusive, The Daughter I Didn't Know I Had. And finally, the Daily Star. Daily Star icons Spock and Captain Kirk are featured on the Daily Star, as it writes, zero gravity experiments in space that will beat Earth's diseases, and they have space holds the key to beating Earth's diseases. It's life-saving boffinery, Jim, but not as we know it. Indeed. And those, for better or worse, are your headlines. This Tuesday, the 28th of March.
The weather forecast is brought to you by Liberty Seguros. Liberty Seguros, the #1 preferred expat insurer, has more than 200 dedicated expat agents and brokers who understand your needs and speak your language. The weather on Talk Radio Europe. Find us at TRE.radio.
And a quick look at your weather for today. Costa del Sol currently 16 degrees. The high is going to be 21. It's sunny today with southeasterly moderate winds. Rest of the week, sunny and dry. Granada, 8 degrees at the moment and sunny, a high of 25. Winds are from the southwest and they are light to moderate. Almeria, 14 degrees and sunny, a high of 21. Easterly winds today, which are moderate. Murcia, 11 degrees, sunny, a high of 24. Again, easterly moderates today. Alicante, 12 degrees with a high of 20. It's sunny with light to moderate south. Easterlies, Denia, 10 degrees and sunny, a high of 20. Winds are from the south and they are moderate to strong. Over on the islands of Ibiza, mixture of sunshine and cloud, but mainly sunny. It's currently 12 degrees. The high will be 19. The winds are from the south and they are moderate. Mallorca, currently in Palma, it's 14 degrees. The high is going to be 17 today, a sunny day with southwesterlies, which are moderate. And finally, Gibraltar, mixture of sunshine and cloud on the rock at the moment, sunnier later. It's currently 17 degrees. The high is going to be 19. The winds are strong easterlies, and that's your weather.
The weather on Talk Radio Europe. Find us at TRE.radio.
Viewpoint with
Giles Brown.
Always live, always lively. Back with you. If you want to get involved with today's Viewpoint, these are the numbers.
To contact TRE, please call 952 78 4000. Email studio@tre.radio. Send us a WhatsApp on +34 645 99 67 95. Message us on Facebook, Talk Radio Europe Official, or tweet us at TRE Talk Radio.
And I'm joined in the studio this morning by Rosalind Scott-Gibb. Good morning to you, Rosalind.
Morning, Giles.
Good to have you with us. Right then, lots happening, obviously, we're reporting with today on a Viewpoint. The main story, one of the main stories, is the Scottish National Party focus switching to a longer-term policy of converting voters to the case for independence rather than heading off for a second referendum. That's what the new leader, Husma Yousaf, has said. What is your take on this one then, Ros?
Well, I'm still just getting over mourning the loss of Nicola Sturgeon because she did such a good job for such a long time. I know she made a mistake, in my opinion, on the whole thing of 15-year-olds being allowed to take sex, drugs to align their sex or adjust their sexual without parental permission. Now, this was a huge mistake, but it's one of the very few mistakes, in my opinion, that she did in her 8 years as the First Minister. So nobody would have been able to measure up that well. But from what I sort of read about the new Yousaf, I mean, he's kind of the least undynamic of the three that were running,
right? And
only just got in by he doesn't sound. It sounds like they're in a difficult position, and I fear for that the independence of Scotland will be delayed for some time.
He got 48.2% of the votes in the first round, and then 52.1%. So it is indeed a close run thing, and it's being described as a bitter sort of a bitter contest. I mean, do you think that we're looking perhaps to a period of infighting then within the Scottish National Party?
Mass confusion, infighting, lack of direction. I mean, Nicola Sturgeon knew exactly. She was very focused, and it'll still have to come out exactly why she left. I mean, maybe she was just tired and fed up, or I hope there isn't more to it. I feel she's pretty squeaky clean, but there's something to do with a contract for ferries and things. So we'll have to see what comes out. But I wish her well, and I'm very sorry to see the end of her.
I mean, the quote was that Yousaf couldn't be any more the SNP establishment if he tattooed Nicola Sturgeon forever on his forehead. That's what the Financial Times Stevens Bush said. Mm-hmm. So it looks like it's going to be a continuity candidate. But in terms of where we are with Scottish independence, I mean, although he may say we're going to look for, we're not going to push for referendum first off, it's still going to be very, very tough indeed for Whitehall to sanction a vote for Scottish independence or referendum, because we had one a couple of years ago, and then Boris Johnson, when he was Prime Minister, was absolutely set in stone, as was the brief Prime Minister Liz Truss was absolutely didn't countenance the fact that Scotland could have an independence. So
never again. They will never get another referendum. So it's not a good time for Scotland, I fear.
Yeah, and this coming in. So we have a Hindu running the UK and a Muslim running Scotland. I bet the Brexiteers are loving that. Also, this coming in as well. Landlords don't need to give problem tenants 3 strikes. They can just enforce Section 21. Presumably that's the Renters Act. The Renters Act. Who's going back to the Scottish story? Yousaf is the first politician from an ethnic minority to become First Minister after winning the race to replace Sturgeon. He's born in 85 in Glasgow.
I know he's your youngest also.
37 years. Studied politics at Glasgow University, so he knows his onions, as it were, or his nips and tassies, and he says that as an angry 16-year-old Muslim growing up in the West in the aftermath of 9/11, with all of the Islamophobia that ensued after all of that, I wanted to change the world and change attitudes. Politics have given me a platform and a voice to do that. But when you look at the Scottish immigration policy and its experience. I mean, Scotland's always been open to immigrants from all over.
Much more than England.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, that's 952 78 4000, the phone number. studio@tre.radio is the email. The Facebook page is Talk Radio Europe Official if you want to get in touch.
To contact TRE, please call 952 78 4000. Email studio@tre.radio. Send us a WhatsApp on +34 645 99 67 95. Message us on Facebook, Talk Radio Europe Official, or tweet us at TRE Talk Radio.
952 78 4000. Looking at the headlines again. Leading activists have vowed that protests will continue in Israel after the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu announced he would delay controversial judicial reforms until next month. As long as the legislation continues and is not shelved, we will be on the street, said Dr. Shikma Bresler, one of the main leaders of the protest movement. Israeli newspaper Haaretz said that Netanyahu's decision to delay the reforms shows he's lost his touch. Opposition leader Yair Lapid called it the biggest crisis in the history of the country. What's going on in Israel, Russ?
Well, we all know Israel's very complex, and there's all these different factions. But the bottom line is, in my opinion, Netanyahu wants to stay out of prison and hang on to power, basically. I mean, it seems to me like there's many bills to do with changing the judiciary that are all to do with protecting him and his family. It's not mentioned that much. And, I'm amazed how little is mentioned in the American and the British news. I watch a lot of Al Jazeera's, which to me is much more objective and gives a lot more information, better coverage, more coverage and better. So this is really a very crucial point in the development of Israel, in its kind of short history as independent democratic country. And it's the worst point. But 12 weeks, over 1.5 million people striking, and even the armed forces refusing to go out. So now, of course, his Minister of Defense? This was where Netanyahu obviously negotiated to put this bill, this vote off for 1 month only. He had no choice. He had to do something. The whole country had come to a standstill. And but they're bringing in a new special force.
And we've got a caller on the line. Morning, caller, you're live on TRE. What's your name? Where are you calling from? What's the viewpoint, please?
Good morning. It's Gil from Calgary.
Morning, Gil.
I can't be too polite, but what Sharon said is a lot of rubbish.
Sharon, it's Roslyn, by the way. It's Roslyn, thank you.
Sorry, I thought it was Sharon. I didn't recognize the voice. Roslyn. I'll tell you why. Because in the case of Netanyahu's trial, the judges have already been selected. They're not going to change. This law has got nothing to do with it. He's not going to get different judges because of the reform of the legal system. The judges have been selected, and that is done. And it's still going on. This process. This process hasn't been stopped. Because of this law. It's got nothing to do with it.
Why do you think so? That there have been so many protests, then, Gil? Why do you think that
I'll tell you why. Because the elite class in Israel has lost power. There's been a sort of right-wing government with a few exceptions already, like for 10 years continuously, a little bit more. And there's no chance that the left or the center-left will get back to power because people don't change opinions that quickly. They might change from one party to another, but they don't change between the blocs. And the country has moved a little bit to the right, which has happened in many other countries, a little bit more religious. That also happens in some countries because religious people have more kids. More conservative. Netanyahu has been very successful with the economy. When the economy was ruled by the sort of Labour Party and the like, it was all very, very old-fashioned, looked like an East European country, very unsuccessful. During the time of Netanyahu, the GDP per capita has tripled. Triple. I mean, how many countries can have that record? It's just unbelievable. Unemployment is low, inflation is low. He's been very, very successful. And the elite class in Israel consists from people who are, first, they're Ashkenazi Jews, they're European Jews. They're also very, very secular. They're old-timers, they're not the new immigrants, and they're also very liberal and very socialist. And that class is losing power. And the only power they have is in the Supreme Court, because the way the Supreme Court works is not very good and doesn't resemble any other democracy in the world. It's like a clique of friends. Everybody votes everybody else in. There's no control by the political side, which is the case in every democracy in the world except for Britain. And reforms are needed. Whether the reforms that Netanyahu suggested are the best, I don't know. There could be some other ways to do it. There are other models in the world to copy.
It's going to be a disturbing sign for Netanyahu that if you've got military reservists not turning up and what was it? The reserve pilots and the long range bomber force yesterday said they weren't going to come out.
Yes, that's right, but it's got nothing to do with the judicial reform. I mean, how many people, feel that strongly about things which only lawyers can really understand? People are upset when they're not paid. They want more money. They want to retire early, like in France. This is just an excuse. They want to get rid of Netanyahu. That's the main thing, because the country is split between the elite of the past and the people who now are more powerful. Because the people.
Could this be seen as a reaction, though, as well to the expanding, the movements that have gone recently to expand in the occupied territories and been putting on Israeli settlements? Because that has sparked calls for a second, a third intifada. I mean, what?
No, it's okay. It's one. The settlements are one aspect of this, because in the past, when Netanyahu wanted to propose more settlements, the Supreme Court stopped it. But this is a political decision. This is not a legal decision. It is entirely political. It's got something to do with it, because now he has one of the parties in the coalition is called Jewish Power, and they want more settlements in the West Bank, and that's why they want the law, because it will make it easier to start new settlements. That is part of it. It's not the whole story. There are other factors as well. But whether the settlements have got anything to do with this new intifada, no, there's got nothing to do with it, because settlements have been going on all the time. I mean, the settlements have been going on almost consistently for the past 55 years. There hasn't been a change of policy, even between one government or another government. Netanyahu hasn't increased the number of settlements or decreased it. It's been constant all the time. The reason why there's so much upset now in the West Bank is because the Palestinian Authority there is losing power. And it's just a question of time when it will end. Either the Israelis will end the Palestinian Authority by force, which is a possibility, but I think most likely they're just waiting till Mahmoud Abbas will pass away, because he's 88 years old. He's not going to live forever. In a few years he's going to pass away. And then there are already about 5 factions fighting for power. So I think that is the problem, not the settlements, where the policy has never changed.
Thank you for your call in. As always, good to have you with us. 952 78 4000. Ros.
I'm so pleased you were being polite, Gil, about me. Well, first of all, why are they killing so many of the settlers if it's just to do with the leadership of the Palestinians? There's so many illegal killings every day, and it's gone up like tenfold. It's just not covered, and the Israelis don't apologize for it. They just get on with it. As for Netanyahu, he has to stay in power to stay out of prison. That's the connection there. As soon as that's what he's afraid of. He doesn't want to go to prison. But because what he wants is for the government to be able to cancel any bills that come through the Supreme Court, to have that power over the court. Now, my understanding, it's only my understanding, it's only an opinion. I am entitled to my opinion. That's what I'm here for. That they are most people agree that the Supreme Court has too much power. It has to be adjusted slightly. But I disagree with you, Gil, that it's only moved slightly to the right. No, we're talking... Netanyahu did a deal with the extreme far right, and his closest parliamentarians are from the extreme far right. So we're not talking about moving a small amount to it's the right and the extreme far right that he is dealing with. And he has just sold his soul in order to stay in power and stay out of prison.
952784000 to the WhatsApps we go. Hi, Viewpoint team. The lack of critical analysis or any real coverage of Netanyahu, and especially the illegal settlement expansion, is the fear of castigation as anti-Semite. Look at what's happening to Jeremy Corbyn. That's from David in Kettering. Meanwhile, Israeli, morning Richard, Israeli GDP fell almost 9% in 2020 when Netanyahu was in power, and GDP per capita has not tripled. It's only risen about 80% since his first stint in 1996. Netanyahu is a corrupt narcissist. 952784000, the phone number. As Roz mentioned, for the first time, ultra-religious or far-right and nationalist parties are part of the ruling coalition. Key government posts have been handed to extreme hardliners, such as National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir, and I hope I got that right, who's ideologically committed to the Israeli annexation of the West Bank. The government has begun a move to expand Israeli settlements in the occupied territories, whilst proposing laws that would label NGOs and activists opposing the occupation as foreign agents, as is the case in Russia. Legislation is being proposed that would introduce political control over the police, impose the death penalty on terrorists who kill Israeli citizens, whilst promising to prevent investigation of violent soldiers, and most contentiously undermine judicial independence. That's from the week. Back to the lines we go. Morning, caller, you're live on TRE. What's your name? Where are you calling from? What's your viewpoint, please?
It's Gil again,
yes,
if I'm allowed. Well, Rosalind said a few things, and then there was a man who came and said some things about Netanyahu, about the GDP in Israel. No, it has gone up. He's got the wrong data. The GDP per capita in Israel today is higher than that in Germany. It's higher than that in Japan. You know, and you know, there are statistics. You can go on the internet and find out yourself if you don't believe me. Okay, as for Netanyahu's trial, it's got nothing to do with it. The trial is continuing, and this has got, you know, it's completely irrelevant. Now, about the illegal settlements, I mean, well, there are a few issues there. Some settlements were illegal according to Israeli law, and you know that's been changed, and they're allowed to come back. But I think when most people say, you know, illegal settlements, they mean illegal according to the international law. Yeah. Now, it doesn't matter how many times people say it is illegal. My own opinion is that it is not illegal, because you can go and look at all the legal documentation that has any relevance to do with Israel or the West Bank, and I remind the listeners that the League of Nations decided that the whole area of Israel, including the West Bank, including the Golan Heights, and including what turned out to be the Kingdom of Jordan, would be a Jewish state. That was voted by all the members of the League of Nations. There were only two main countries that weren't members in that time, and that is, three. There was Russia, America, and Germany didn't take part, but everybody else in the world signed on that, and that is the only legal document concerning the West Bank. There's been no other legal, not even the partition plan of 47 is relevant. So I can't see why it is illegal.
Okay, Gil, thank you very much for your call in there again. 952784000. Looking at this is a few bits and pieces that come in on this one. Significant opposition to the measures driving mass protests. It says here that Herzog, quoting Herzog, that's President Isaac Herzog, warned last month that Israel risks being torn apart if the government and opposition fail to engage in dialogue to reach a compromise. Everything that's happening in Israel is amongst the signs that this is the end of the entity. That's what Hezbollah have said. speaking to The Observer, historian Simon Shamma called on British Jews to speak out over the complete disintegration of the political and social compact that underpins the state of Israel. And the staunchly conservative and pro-Israel body, the Board of Deputies of British Jews, condemned a call by a senior Israeli minister, which was a couple of weeks ago now, said that a Palestinian town in the West Bank should be wiped out in response for the murder of 2 Israelis. In response to international criticism, the Israeli government has fallen back on a time-worn playbook, equating any criticism of Israel with anti-Semitism and violence, thus seeking to delegitimize clients. That's Politico. That is a dangerous approach. You could say that that Netanyahu is looking here at a perfect storm, because looking at images coming from Tel Aviv last night. I mean, these are young people. These are young Israelis who are trying to establish themselves in a modern world, and this sort of action by the old school politicians at 75, you can say that he's old school now. They may say they have no place in this, Roz.
Well, this is the thing. The younger Israelis are looking at the way the Palestinians are being treated, and they don't like it. So this is also part of the demonstrations. I do wonder why the United States continues to give $1 billion in security-related funds to Israel every year.
Well, because, I mean, they're worried about the destabilization even further of the place, if, you know, of the region, if it doesn't, because obviously you have countries on its border who wish it ill.
I know, but shouldn't they be taking a closer look at what they're promoting and what they're...
yeah, but I mean, they will say, obviously they will say that when you've got states like Iran, Syria, etc., it is better to have a secure Israel than have even further chaos in the region and all that might entail.
Although every day it's becoming increasingly unstable. Israel is at its most unstable, probably.
952-78-4000. 952-78-4000 is the phone number. It's because most of the US Senate are Jewish. That's okay. Thank you for that one. GDP per capita in Israel lower than the UK and Germany. United Kingdom 45102. Hong Kong, Canada 43963. And Israel comes below the United Arab Emirates. It's at 40805. Hi there, this is no good Gil going back to the 1930s League of Nations to validate his unapologetic views supporting Israel's Zionist aggression on the occupied territories as defined by international law, which he chooses to ignore. Thank you for that. 952-78-4000. Going to take a quick break and then back with more Viewpoint.
Viewpoint with
Giles Brown.
To contact TRE, please call 952 78 4000. Email studio@tre.radio. Send us a WhatsApp on +34 645 99 67 95. Message us on Facebook, Talk Radio Europe Official, or tweet us at TRE Talk Radio.
Those are the numbers to get in contact with us this morning. Joined in the studio by Rosalind Scott-Gibb. If you want to get your viewpoint on anything that is crossing your radar, then those are the numbers to get in contact with us. Dreadful news coming out again last night. 6 people, 3 of them children, have been killed in a primary school shooting in Nashville. The student victims were all aged 8 or 9. The convent school in Nashville is a private Christian school for students aged 3 to 11. The shooter, identified as 28-year-old Audrey Hale, was killed by police. Law enforcement officers told ABC News that Hale may have once attended the school. He'd left behind writings and scouted a second possible attack location, police added. I think it's since come out that this is apropos of nothing, that Hale is trans, so it should be she. But Roz, I mean, I'm going to call her on the line, 952-78-4000. Morning, caller, you're live on air. What's your name? Where are you calling from? What's your viewpoint, please?
Kate Costa-Blanca.
Morning, Kate.
2 things. I came in late, so I only heard the last quarter of an hour. 2 things on Israel. One, the United States contribution to Israel is probably the one least contentious in in America between the Republicans and the Democrats. There's a significant voting population who believe in the second coming and I've forgotten the particular terms, and therefore it's one of the things that everyone lets go. It doesn't cause any controversy at all within states. It's a no-brainer. Secondly, the Balfour agreement, the Balfour thing in the early 20th century, which is often quoted as the starting point for the legitimacy of Israel. The letter said something like the Jews should have a homeland in Israel, or Palestine, as long as it doesn't adversely affect existing population. It didn't. Those are not the right words, but the original totemic starting point, or the one that Israel usually quotes, respects the rights of the existing population of Palestine, as it was then. So what Rosalind was talking about, is the reaction of anyone who thinks that's what that should be, as most people I know do.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks for the call in there, Kate. 952-78-4000. That's thoughts of Kate on what we were discussing prior to the break. Just going to go back to that main story again. By the way, or the story of the shooting in Nashville. There was some confusion about the shooter's gender identity as disclosed by police. The police first identified the shooter as 28-year-old woman Audrey Elizabeth Hale at a news conference later yesterday. Nashville's police chief says that Hale was transgender. A police spokesperson said the Watch told the Washington Post that Hale is a biological woman who, on social media profiles, used male pronouns. However, let's get away from that because it's looking at the results of the news coming in of a shooting. The shooter had 2 assault weapons, and here we are once again. President Biden's called for a change in the law once again, and are we going to go down that hopes and prayers route yet again? Morning, caller, you're live on TRE. What's your name? Where are you calling from? What's your viewpoint, please?
It's Gil from Calpe, answering Kate. The aid to Israel has got nothing to do with the Second Coming. It's to do with an agreement from 1979, according to which Egypt and Israel will get exactly the same amount of support. It's very, very difficult to undo that agreement because the question is, if you reduce the aid to Israel, are you going to reduce the aid to Egypt as well? Well, it's not so simple. Now, she mentioned the Balfour Declaration. The thing I mentioned when I called was the San Remo Accord and not the Balfour Declaration, because the San Remo Accord has some legal effect, whereas the Balfour Declaration hasn't. Actually, the Balfour Declaration just says, I'm sort of citing it from memory, it said, His Majesty's government sees in favor the establishment of a national home for the Jews in Palestine. Sees in favor is not promises, so actually it never promised anything. But the San Remo Accord has all the nations of the world signing on it, and that makes it a legal document, an unbinding document, and that is the difference. She did say that the Balfour Accord, Balfour Declaration said something about minorities having full rights. And yes, they have full rights, of course, not in the West Bank. That is something that has to be solved. But the Arabs who live in Israel proper, in what is called the Green Lines, they have full rights. They vote. They are voted. There are members in the Knesset who are Arabs. The deputy of the Supreme Court is an Arab, and actually in the past there was an Arab member of the Supreme Court who sent an ex-Israeli prime minister to prison. That will not happen in a dictatorship or in any of the countries around Israel. That would be something unheard of.
Okay, Jill. Thank you for your call in there. I'm moving off to something like that because I wanted to get onto the talk about gun law. But thank you very much for your comments on that. Yeah, we're moving on from that. Otherwise, we could be here all day with back and forth on this one. If you want to get involved with comments on the gun law or the shootings or what you're going to do in the States, these are the numbers.
To contact TRE, please call 952 78 4000. Email studio@tre.radio. Send us a WhatsApp on +34 645 99 67 95. Message us on Facebook, Talk Radio Europe Official, or tweet us at TRE Talk Radio.
A variety of ways to get in touch with us today. Following me today, of course, Stephen Ritson with Europe Today, Selena with the Lifestyle Show, Hannah with TRE in the afternoon, and it's Tuesday it is, which means that after Howard Brereton Spain today, there will be a repeat of this show. 952 78 4000 is the phone number. Since the shooting in Nashville yesterday, President Joe Biden has renewed calls for Congress to take action on gun violence. Roz, are we ever going to see, do you think, any solution to the American situation here? Because it seems that it's becoming more and more. They don't seem to want to do anything about gun legislation in the States.
I despair. Like the rest of the world, how can this continue to go on? And people having their children killed, and yet no change in the gun laws. It's absolutely despicable. It's even the president can't make a change.
But this is just the whole situation of having a very strong lobby group, isn't it? The National Rifle Association.
Well, it's all about money and power, isn't it?
Yeah, it is seen as it's one of those constitutional rights, the militia, etc. But
it's gone way past that, hasn't it? It's really this particular machine gun that never ever should have been allowed for your average Joe public to be able to get his hands on very quickly and easily. And apparently also young kids, people, when they go to a concert and things, they leave their gun, because everybody has a gun, at least one, in the car. So all these kids break into the cars, and then they've got guns also. So everybody has guns. And people are getting killed.
952 78 4000 is the phone number. Looking at some of the stuff coming in, banning assault weapons. Banning assault weapons is surely one of the major things they want to get. What they're going. Sadly, we've had another mass shooting. Republicans send their thoughts and prayers, but getting any of them to do something about gun violence is fruitless. Guns have more rights than women do in the US. Stop this insanity. Tennessee Republicans have spent the past several months working to pass a ban on drag shows in public to protect children, while doing nothing to gun reform except loosen the laws. It seems a crazy state of affairs.
Apparently, even Trump, not that I have anything good to say about Trump, but even he, when he first came in, tried to have the laws changed and backed off because he knew he would lose support. And he wasn't going to give up any of his support, and that's the problem with the Senate.
But if you think about what happened with some of the other situations, when Dunblane happened just 26 years ago now, the massacre there, and the UK immediately banned. And since then, there have been no mass shootings at the British schools. Australia, the same sort of thing.
Australia did the same thing.
Yeah, and yet. Here we are again. Thoughts and prayers. Somebody's put it in as well. And I said that, and my screen went dead just as I looked here. If you thought children being mentally traumatized by wearing a mask during a raging deadly pandemic, you're really going to be shocked when you find out how much our kids are traumatized by fear of being murdered at school. The people were saying that this for Europeans is quite. It made me take a beat when I looked at it, saying that they had this drill about, was it run, duck, and fight, which are these three rules they have in if there's an active shooter in the building. To the lines we go. 952 78 4000. Morning, caller, you're live on TRE. What's your name? Where are you calling from? What's your viewpoint, please?
Morning. My name's George from Alicante.
Morning, George.
One of the things I'd like to say about this problem in America is that when the Constitution was formed, the people had muskets.
Yep.
Single shot, where you had to load it with black powder. Now, why can't they let people do that now? You're allowed a musket, not a semi-automatic or automatic assault rifle.
Yeah, you'd be allowed a flintlock. I can see people with dueling pistols rushing around Washington D.C.
Well, yes, one shot.
Yeah.
But it'll be in the Constitution. There's nothing wrong there. But one of the ways that could solve it at the moment is with the ammunition. If they stop the sale of military ammunition, the magnums, the high velocity, the 9mm and all that, they could stop it straight away.
Well, let's face it. Nobody needs an assault rifle in civilian life. I don't care what you say, but you don't need to go hunting, and you don't need to go hunting with an automatic rifle. I mean, shotguns are bad enough, but I mean that's the.
Well, I used to have a firearms certificate when I lived in the UK until Dunblane and Hungerford and whatever, and I sold it, got rid of it. That was quite logical. Yeah. It was a bit upsetting because we used to use it for sporting reasons, but we all obliged and did it. But one of the things that's happened since then is that the ammunition, the 9mm, is being developed for security police in airports. A low-velocity composition bullet, which now we can get a bit gruesome here, but it doesn't. The problem in airports is that if they shoot somebody, the bullet goes through them and could hit an innocent person. Yeah. So they're developing low-velocity ammunition. Now, they could do that in America. They could only sell low-velocity ammunition.
Yeah.
But why don't they?
Well, this is the thing. Thank you very much for your call in. Good to have you with us.
Okay.
Thanks for that call. Take care. 952 78 4000. Morning, caller. You're live on TRE. What's your name? Where are you calling from? What's your viewpoint, please?
Morning, Giles. It's Peter.
Morning, Peter.
Morning. As horrendous as these shootings are, and my heart goes out to the families and the people, the loved ones, the Constitution is not what this gentleman before said. The Constitution is about the public being able to arm themselves to the equivalent of the military. So no matter what the military arm themselves with, then the public should be allowed to arm themselves. That's the Constitution, so that they won't be overrun by government. That's the whole idea of the Constitution, not just to sit there with a musket and be able to own a gun. It's to be able to, the public can have the weaponry that the government has. Now, there's plenty of politicians out there that run around with armed bodyguards with all sorts of weaponry. Sure. So if they're going to ban the guns, are they going to ban the guns of the politicians? And also, this term assault weapon, please, there's no such... There's an assault rifle. Yeah. An assault rifle requires a Class 3 license. There is a long waiting list in the United States, a high tax, there's additional background checks, there's more paperwork. 99.9% of the citizens of America cannot own an assault rifle.
So
it's not, an assault weapon.
Yeah,
sorry, George. Assault weapon, is that a hammer? Is that a baseball bat? Is it a lump of wood? That's an assault weapon. A car is an assault weapon. When we discussed this before, I said if you take the guns off them, they'll use cars. This has already been done across Europe. We're also seeing guns now and shootings in Europe, in countries where you never believed it would happen. As I've always said, we tend to treat the symptom and not the cause. Yeah. Mental health issues are through the roof in the United States of America and the rest of the world. We are seeing what's happening to our children being indoctrinated into all sorts of things. Every one of those children at the moment are living on their wits' end, anxiety, depression, fentanyl being flooded into America. There's your problem, not the guns. The guns are not the problem. Mental health issues are the problem. And until we start treating our children like they should be treated instead of mini little adults that are told that they've got every right possible.
Peter, the bongos are going, mate. I'm really sorry because I really want to hear this point, but we may come back to it after the international and national news. Thanks for your call. National news up next, and then back with more Viewpoint.
Talk Radio Europe.
Your voice in Spain.
Discuss, challenge, inform, comment, viewpoint on Talk Radio Europe.
Giles Brown.
Live comment and discussion with studio guests.
Viewpoint. And welcome back to the second half of Viewpoint with me, Giles Brown, joined in the studio by Rosalind Scott Gibb. If you want to get in touch and get your viewpoint across on today's show, then these are the numbers.
To contact TRE, please call 952 78 4000. Email studio@tre.radio. Send us a WhatsApp on +34 645 99 67 95. Message us on Facebook, Talk Radio Europe Official, or tweet us at TRE Talk Radio.
And it's live to the lines we go. Morning, caller, you're live on TRE. What's your name? Where are you calling from? What's the viewpoint, please?
If you're speaking to me, it's Alan Jones.
Good morning, Alan.
Yes. Well, I've been followers of American adhesion to 18th century laws about guns. And although I was quite impressed by the logic of having a militia to oppose a government-inspired organisation that wasn't approved by the locals. In fact, the context is everything. Really, the laws that allow people to arm themselves were simply that, to allow a militia to form, not for people to have nuclear weapons. So, following the logic of your previous caller, local people should allow themselves nuclear weapons because that is what governments have.
Yeah.
Enough said?
Sorry?
Is that enough said?
Yeah, that's the very thought of number 37 down the road behind the white picket fence having a small tactical nuclear weapon, battlefield nuclear weapon is quite something. But yeah, I get that logical extension of the theory there. But thank you very much for the call in.
Thank you. Alan Jones in Gandia.
Thank you.
I'll be speaking to Mr. Ritson later.
Oh,
Bye-bye.
but I shall warn him. There you go. Alan Jones in Gandia. Peter was making the comment, though, obviously, it's about stop calling them assault weapons. I mean, they're rapid fire weapons. I mean, anything could be an assault weapon, I suppose. As you said, a car, a house brick, whatever. But I think it's the rapid rate of fire of these weapons and the fact that they are designed to cause maximum injury. Not really known that. And I'm sure that Senor Ritson will have more than a few things to say. To the WhatsApps we go. WhatsApp +34 645 99 67 95. Hi, Giles. Andy in Fuengirola. Good morning to you, Andy. Your caller said that guns were not the problem. If that's the case, then why is it that no other country on earth has anywhere near the number of school shootings than the US has? Mental health issues affect human beings whether you live in the USA or any other country. To claim the USA has a worse mental health situation than every other country is a poor defense against gun control. I would like to know the source of the caller's research, which confirms the USA has such high cases of mental health issues compared to other countries. Unfortunately, Viewpoint team, there's another different one. The grassroots response in the USA seems to be to ramp up sales of assault weapons and firearms, plus PR for pro-gun lobbies. A sensible government would hold a monopoly of violence, not share it with the population. That's one way of saying it. What we got? So, yeah, looking at these are... Yeah, AR-15. This is the assault rifles that they're called. So Boulder. This is a list of. These are lists of mass shootings, and they're all committed by people with AR-15s. Boulder, Orlando, Parkland, Las Vegas, Sandy Hook, San Bernardino, Midland, Odessa, Colorado Springs, Poway Synagogue, Sutherland Springs, Tree of Life Synagogue, Nashville. They're all AR-15s. Meanwhile, okay, that's just somebody giving technical advice. Thank you very much indeed. Several killed in a fire. Thank you. Several killed in a fire at the Mexico-US border migrant center. People have 3D printers. They make guns automatic on a click of a button, even if they're sold as manual. Okay, so that's that. So, yeah, if you've got any thoughts on those, going into your headlines today, these or any other subjects to talk about during during the next 2 hours. As I said before, SNP is to change tactics. The Scottish National Party's focus will switch to a longer-term policy of converting voters to the case for independence. As soon as I start that, the phones go off. Morning, caller, you're live on TRE. What's your name? Where are you calling from? What's your viewpoint, please?
Yeah, hi, it's John in Meerhouse.
Hello, John.
The really weird thing, or there are some weird things about American gun laws. When I went there in about 1997, I was intending doing a 6-month tour in a motorhome, and I decided that I'd buy myself a handgun.
Right.
I inquired around. I couldn't buy one because I was, as they lovingly call us, I was an alien. But I could legally be given one by somebody. So I said, fine. So I got the gun from a friend of mine. I went back to the police and said, can I now register this gun in my name? No, there's no way you can register it, but you can legally have it.
Okay, what did you feel that you needed to have a handgun in the States? Did it make you feel, yeah? Okay.
Yeah, I did. Because I was touring around, I was going to visit lots of remote areas, as it were, in motorhome. And I decided as a former firearms officer in the police that I would be so you kind of you knew your way around then, and because obviously it's all very well to have a handgun, and gosh, who doesn't want to play with the big boys' toys, but the actual psychology of actually deploying such a weapon perhaps is more than most people are sort of trained to handle. Yeah, of course. In fact, the guy who gave me the gun, when he handed it to me, I said, please put that on the counter, on the desk, on the countertop. And he said, why? I said, just Paul, put it down, please put it. And then I tried to explain to him, gun safety, if you like, because he was pointing this gun at me, which wasn't loaded. Right. Of course, only unloaded guns kill people, because you say it wasn't loaded and someone gets shot dead. And I had to teach him. He said, hey, that's neat.
Yeah.
Well, I said to him, when you hand a gun to somebody, you open it and show, like a handgun, you show them it's empty.
But it's an interesting it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because I said we talked about the UK and we talked about Australia, and after both countries had experiences of mass shootings, and the government passes legislation. And obviously, since then, no mass shootings, and yet, in the States, sure, it's becoming more and more prevalent. And you can argue that people, there are situations where people who have extreme views, or obviously they're very sick individuals, but they have the access to those, and you do more damage in a school or in a synagogue with a weapon than you do if you just drive a car at it, for example.
Yes, of course. The other crazy thing I thought about America, and I hadn't realised it until I went there, every state effectively is like a different country, and the rules concerning firearms vary with every state. So, like in Florida, for example, where I started off, the gun had to be what they call 2 moves away from being used. Right. So it could be like in a pouch in my glove compartment. So I'd have to open the glove compartment, take it out of the pouch, or 2 other moves. And I couldn't carry it as it had to be concealed. I couldn't carry it
open carry, isn't it? That's what they talk about. Yeah.
So then the next state I drove into was Georgia, and so I stopped. It took about 2 hours for the people on they call it the welcome station. It's like, I say, it's almost like customs going into another country, to try and find out for me what the gun laws were on that state. And that was, it had to be carried overtly. It could not be, having a concealed weapon was illegal.
Yeah.
And by the time I got to the 3rd state, I gave up because I was spending hours literally while they tried to work out what the law was for me. So I just put the gun in the bedside cabinet in my motorhome, and it stayed there. And fortunately, when I sold the thing, I got rid of the gun.
Thanks for the call. I've got some more calls coming in, but thank you very much indeed. 952784000. And as soon as I said that, of course, the call has gone. 952784000 is the phone number. Caller, please try calling in again. Here are the numbers.
To contact TRE, please call 952 78 4000. Email studio@tre.radio. Send us a WhatsApp on +34 645 99 67 95. Message us on Facebook, Talk Radio Europe Official, or tweet us at TRE Talk Radio.
just looking at some more of the comments coming in. 952, you can also contact us via, don't forget, of course, we have the website tre.radio. We are on Instagram as Talk Radio Official, and we Twitter and tweet as well. You can also download most of the shows from the past 7 days on our Facebook, on our webpage, which is tre.radio. Those and some of the selected interviews that we've had over the years. 952-78-4000. As soon as I say that, the phones go absolutely bananas. Morning, caller, you're live on TRE. What's your name? Where are you calling from? What's your viewpoint, please?
Charles, it's Peter again.
Yes, Peter.
Yeah, I don't know if I was the caller that disappeared, but the problem is when you're on a mobile and you have that lag, and I can't hear John speaking, so I don't know when he's gone or continue to talk, and then I can't get through. So, but the person that mentioned the IR-15 is exactly what I'm talking about. IR-15 is not an assault rifle. Okay. It doesn't have a selected trigger mode, and I'm just splitting hairs here. I mean, it can't be selective fire. So it's not. And IR stands for Armor Light. It was to replace the one they used in Vietnam. Was it the M14 or whatever? Yeah. Anyway, all these, the person reading out these shootings, if you actually drill down on the figures, and one is too many. Don't get me wrong. I mean, too many people jump on people because when they try to put across a viewpoint, you're automatically assume that you must support that rather than just trying to get the facts over. And that's what I'm trying to do here, is get the facts over. I know you are an avid supporter of the war in Ukraine. I don't know if Rosalind is, but the war in Ukraine, 50 billion, a billion a week been going out there. There's a law in the Constitution, or stemmed from the Constitution, that says that it's called an EUM, end user monitoring. And every weapon, every dollar, every cent that goes there or goes anywhere, leaves outside the United States of America, should be tracked, traced, know where it's going. We don't. And so far, I don't know what the population of Ukraine is, but if you watch the BBC propaganda, you get one story. Go on YouTube and watch the Hindustan Time or Truth, and you see the other side of it, somewhere in the middle, probably. But I don't know how many people have died in Ukraine so far. They're training young men. There's no equal rights when you send people to the front, and they're given about 6 weeks training, sent there and literally blown to bits by these weapons of mass destruction. Now, this is an ongoing war, an ongoing expenditure. Young children being bombed, blitzed, murdered, call it what you want. Nobody seems, or not many people, seem to worry about that or pull out governments for that. There are, like I said, the fentanyl problem, the trank problem they've got there now. There's more people die from DUIs, driving under the influence, than they do get in shootings. And if you look at the shootings, the majority of people killed in the United States of America by a gun is a handgun. It's a revolver, and it's one-on-one stuff. Nobody seems to be talking about that. Nobody. When you say remove the guns, remove the illegal guns, if I were in power and I was given the power to remove the guns in America, I'd start with the illegal guns. And by starting with illegal guns, you get the revolvers off the streets. And that's where the murders are happening, on the streets of Chicago, on the streets of Illinois, on the streets of New York, revolvers daily. Many, many people are shot daily in America by a handgun. And that far outweighs the school shootings.
Yeah, but it's the profile. Yeah, it's the profile of this thing, isn't it? And it's the slaughter of the innocents, isn't it? This is the thing which gets people going, because obviously these are people walking into, we're not talking about a robbery that goes tragically wrong, or black on black crime or whatever. You're talking about somebody walking in armed, normally with several weapons. Doesn't matter if they're shotguns, revolvers, what I would wrongly call an assault weapon, etc. It's the fact that these are slaughters in schools, which are supposed to be the safest places, and churches and places of worship. That's the problem.
Yeah, and I agree. And also, if you want to do something drastically fast and effective, do what the right say: arm the schools. Put people on guards on schools and arm them. At least then you can look down the line, because you're not going to stop it overnight. And if you want to stop it overnight or curtail it overnight, then you weaponize the schools, or you weaponize those. Then you can do something more long term. But at least you offer the children some sort of protection. You can read numerous cases where people have pulled out guns and prevented that sort of thing. But nobody adds up those, do they? And yes, we are at a point where the weaponry out there is extraordinarily useful, wrong word. Effective.
Potent, yeah.
Potent, yes. And maybe the law does need looking at, but, you just can't just change the Constitution. You change it once, then there's other things in the Constitution other people want changed. But as I said, people are dying all the time. It doesn't make it right. But as you say, it's very emotive. It's children, so everybody jumps up and down. But the drug side of it, and again, going back to what I said, someone starts, why is America worse than anywhere? Well, it's obvious why America is worse than anywhere else with mental health issues. But the very fact is, the information is now coming out. It's transgender. Now you can bet your bottom dollar there's some health issues there. You don't walk into a school with a gun unless you have mental health issues. So it's definitely connected to mental health issues. So let's look at why are so many. The suicide rate in America of young children is through the roof. Why? I don't know why. I'm trying to point out here why. If we were working at that end of it, instead of just saying, ban the gun, because that is not going to work. Like I said, load up a transit van, fill it up with petrol, stick a trigger in there or an explosive device in there, a mobile phone, whatever you want, drive it into the nearest school. You do a lot more damage than you would with a gun. A lot more damage, but it's not going to stop people doing what they're doing. And also, because it is so emotive and because it is so newsworthy, this is a way to go out for many people. They used to call it suicide by cop. Many people used to drive their car over the side of a cliff. Now they can live on forever. They get notoriety. They can live on forever. They just go out and do this horrendous crime because it gets the notice. This one, I believe, like many of the others, has written...
written a manifesto. Yeah, they all tend to
a manifesto.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so if you're going to write a manifesto, it's not like you just suddenly cracked and gone overboard. You haven't done a Michael Douglas falling down. You've sat there for months on end, stewing over the system, and written a manifesto, posted it on the internet, and there's a whole new thing again. The internet. Why are they allowing this? They won't allow me to take the mickey out of the transgender, but they'll allow someone to sit there and write a manifesto on how they're going to end the world. So, like I said, I'm just trying to point out a few facts here and stop people just knee-jerking all the time. So,
Peter, always good to hear from you with that one. Thanks very much. Thanks very much indeed. 952 78 4000. Rose.
Well, yeah, but Giles, as we agreed, when they asked people to put down their guns in the UK and in Australia, it took down the number of killings. I just looked up AR-15 style rifles. 1 in 20 people have them in the US.
That's worrying, isn't it?
That's worrying. Yeah. To start. And the schools are doing something. They're developing strong rooms. Can you imagine? Schools have to make strong rooms, safety rooms that the kids can go to protect themselves against.
It's very dark, isn't it? You have to have the situation, to put it mildly. 952 78 4000. Let's look at some of the headlines as well, though we still take calls on that particular one. As I said before, we already talked about the Scottish National Party. Ron DeSantis. Oh, this might perk you up for us. Ron DeSantis leads Donald Trump by 8 points in the early battleground of Iowa. This is a poll showing the two men fight a tight battle for the Republican presidential nomination in states holding early primaries. This is according to the Times, despite wider surveys putting Trump ahead. The national polling shows a comfortable lead for Trump, with a Monmouth University survey last week putting him on 41% amongst party voters, and DeSantis on 27%. Daily Mail, as said before, is coming in is being accused again. Doreen Lawrence says the Daily Mail hired private investigators to hack her phone, potentially disrupting the investigations, the murder of her son Stephen, and actually just saying that there's breaking news: Prince Harry arriving in court again in central London. They accuse the titles of making widespread use of illegal tactics to obstain stories over more than 2 decades. The Mail's dismissed this as a prosperous smear. Meanwhile, other things are coming through, which include Germany. The first shipment of tanks from Germany have been sent to Ukraine. Berlin has announced 18 Leopard 2 main battle tanks were delivered after Ukrainian crews were fully trained to use them. About 40 Marder infantry fighting vehicles have also used Ukraine, Der Spiegel reported, citing unnamed sources. According to the reports from Ukraine, Challenger 2 tanks from the UK have also arrived in the country. And as Peter said, I am what did he call me? An unabashed enthusiast for the war in Ukraine. Anyway,
Just briefly back to Florida.
Okay, yes. Florida.
Yeah,
Ross,
but I'm very upset.
Can I just prime the listeners because we meet in the car park beforehand, and I was and Ross was like, "Ooh," and then she said, "I'm going to." And I remember who could forget those glory days when all you did was to hit a button marked Trump and the whole station would explode, and we thought that's him gone, but no, just when you thought it was safe to go back to the voters, it seems 47, what did I say it was? It was 41% amongst the Republican Party voters against 27% for DeSantis.
Well, what I'm really concerned about is the school system. Now, this is also in the UK, but in Florida seems to be the strongest. Just one example that came up the other day, grade 5 or 6, I think 12, 13-year-olds, and it was an art history class. And so the teacher was discussing Michelangelo, the statue of David.
Yes.
Well known and well respected, etc. And the one parent, because they feel now everything has to go through the parents before they're allowed to teach it. And one parent was very upset and said this was pornography.
Yeah.
And so the principal ended up resigning.
Because they didn't put underpants on David, basically.
Or a skirt or something.
A skirt, yes.
Anything would have done.
Yes.
But not the new David.
The human form.
The human form for 12, 13-year-old.
Yeah.
Art class, art history.
I remember one of my art teachers famously saying that they had to teach art class to a bunch of 9 or 10-year-olds or whatever, and they said this is in the 70s, so this is before the internet, and they were talking about, and then the teacher had to say, now look, we're going to be doing art and history of art, and there will be naked men or women, and that was all fine. And they said they went through the first day, and the second day somebody came in because they found a stash of art magazines in a cupboard somewhere, and it was like, look at this, miss. It was like, okay, fine, move swiftly onwards. Anyway.
Well, I suppose a fig leaf, that's what they did in Victorian times. They put a fig leaf whenever somebody from the royal family came to the art gallery or something. So I suppose they could have put a fig leaf. But
anyway,
it's a bit worrying. I'm worried about the educational system.
You do, yes, right. So anyway, Trump, DeSantis. Just when you thought it was safe to go back to the art class,
Trump is gaining strength. It's very worrying, very, very concerning, I must say. So we'll see what happens about these court cases. Oh, there's one little joke. I don't know if we're allowed to say it on air.
Well, it was because this. I mean, he has been. He's been saying there's going to be, not Armageddon, but he said there's going to be death and destruction if he gets arrested over the Stormy Daniels case.
He's even. That's right. He's
Did you see
becoming
this?
More brave. Now, there was just one reporter, journalist, who did something on Stormy Daniels and saying she's really a very impressive woman because she's just who she is. She stands up. She does do...
Well, Sam McAllister, who I interviewed, who did the book Scoop, interviewed Stormy Daniels or was there and said that she's an absolute force of, hence the name, force of nature.
So she's really good on so what?
Careful.
Apparently somebody wrote in and said Trump wouldn't go near her with a 10-foot pole.
And she replied,
said it's only 3 inches.
Hey, comedy there on Viewpoint, and we'll be back. If you want to get your own Stormy Daniels joke in here, the numbers.
To contact TRE, please call 952 78 4000. Email studio@tre.radio. Send us a WhatsApp on +34 645 99 67 95. Message us on Facebook, Talk Radio Europe Official, or tweet us at TRE Talk Radio.
And let's go back to the WhatsApps then to see what people are saying. So this is about AK. So is my aim. AR-15s were classified as assault weapons and banned under the Public Safety and Recreational Firearms Use Protection Act in 1994, presumably in the UK. President of the United States 24. Sleepy Joe 11-5. Tangerine Scream, I like that. 16-5. And RDS. Ron DeSantos, 7-2. And hi, Giles. After hearing your caller state that suicide rates in the USA are going through the roof, I thought I researched that. This study by Cambridge University is a worldwide study on youth suicide, and I'm just opening up suicide rates in children aged. This is Cambridge University Press. Suicide rates in children aged 10 to 14 years worldwide, changes in the past 2 years. Far from going through the roof, as your caller likes to keep mentioning, show the exact opposite. North American countries, both genders, reported a significant decrease in suicide rates in the USA, and a decrease only for boys in Canada. That's one study coming in from Cambridge Care. 952-78-4000 is the phone number. studio@tre.radio is the email. Like to hear your thoughts on that or anything else. Thank you to Mark for sending me through a couple of images with people. The various candidates in the American Senate with blood on their hands and they're praying. This in from Mark. Mark, good morning to you. Good to hear from you. Italy curator slams ignorance in Michelangelo. This is what we're talking about. This is from AFP. The head of the museum, the head of the Italian museum housing Michelangelo's David, criticised Monday's Twisted Minds, who equated nudity with pornography after a US teacher was forced out for showing pupils the statue. Cecile Holberg, director of the Accademia in Florence, told AFP the row showed a huge ignorance about art history and was the product of misplaced puritanism. A school principal in Tallahassee, Florida, was forced to resign last week following complaints that her class of 11 and 12-year-olds was shown a picture of the naked statue of David. One parent reportedly said the image was pornographic. This is absolutely astonishing because we're talking about the icon of the Renaissance, Michelangelo's David, which has been recognized across the world for generations. She said the statue was hailed for its beauty and purity, adding, one must have a twisted mind to combine nudity with what was suggested, because obviously there's a big difference between nudity and pornography. The director decried a huge ignorance about history and the history of art, which, more than anything, is quite sad. Florence Mayor Dario Nadella, for his part, condemned the US row as simply ridiculous. Michelangelo's David, sculpted between 1501 and 1504 from a single block of marble, depicts the biblical hero David, who killed the giant Goliath with his sling, and has continued an emblem of the Italian Renaissance. Anyone who feels disturbed with this has a serious problem with the roots of Western culture, Holberg said. Yeah, I can imagine taking it to a Keith Haring or and I'm trying to think of the photographer now, and he's gone completely out of Robert Mapplethorpe exhibition. That would really blow their tiny minds. Mapplethorpe. No, he makes, yeah, he's certainly quite something. Anyway, thank you for Mark for sending that in to me, and good to hear from you as well. A short break and then back with more Viewpoints.
Viewpoint with Giles Brown.
Indeed. 952-78-4000 is the phone number. studio@tre.radio is the email. The Facebook page is Talk Radio Europe Official. You can WhatsApp me on +34 645 99 67 95. Thank you, Richard Philistines. Is all you can say about the people who who don't appreciate the beauty of the naked human male form. Don't look at me like that, Ros. Indeed. Right then.
No, I'm in favour of the beautiful
I'm sure you are, steady. I'm keeping my kit on, Ros. Right. We had a very, very heated debate about our next subject, about what to call them.
Oh, yes. Octopuses.
Yes.
Anyway, I must stand up for the octopuses. And as Stephen Ritson mentioned a couple of weeks ago, that wonderful documentary film on Southwest Southwest Africa that he spent over a year studying the octopus. And my octopus teacher...
Not Stephen Ritson.
No, sorry. Stephen mentioned it.
Okay, I think some visions of Stephen Ritson gazing into the fish tank.
No, he doesn't have time for that. But and studying the octopus over a year and made friends with his... it's a beautiful documentary, and it had me in tears for days. I was devastated. I was so upset about these wonderful, intelligent, sensitive creatures and how they only live a year. And I couldn't quite understand how they could only... Such a highly developed being could only live a year. But I was equally upset this morning when I read about plans for the world's first octopus farm, which will see 1 million of these highly intelligent creatures crammed into tiny tanks every year and then killed painfully by being frozen alive. This is Spain. I'm sorry, it's Spain. Right. I don't like to speak badly about Spain.
Is this like a battery hen operation then?
Exactly.
Is it
for our wonderful creatures, and then being sold off to restaurants? Now, I would like to suggest that I'm a vegetarian, but I used to occasionally eat fish. I do occasionally eat fish, but increasingly less as we learn to understand more about our sea creatures.
Indeed. I've got a caller on the line, Rod. Hang on a second. Morning, caller. You're live on TRE. What's your name? Where are you calling from? What's your viewpoint, please?
Good morning, Giles. A rare contribution from me. How are you guys? Are you all right?
Morning, Jason. Just right. So, octopuses. It is octopuses we checked.
Are you speaking about octopuses, are you?
We are, indeed.
Very highly intelligent creature and very cruel to farm them. But that's not what I wanted to call about because of the time lag. What I wanted to say was that the problem is the human condition. I often think that even though we've evolved militarily to do more harm and technologically wise, emotionally we've not evolved. We still display the same primeval tendency to do harm. And speaking about mental health, look at the role models that our leaders set in the world and politicians who think it's okay to bomb the hell out of each other to peace. Second World War excluded. This is absolutely futile. And then you look at you're going about octopuses, the harm we do to our nature, our planet, the harm we do to each other. There's something innately destructive in our makeup. And what example does this set to younger people? People are fed by social media. We live in a materialistic, consumerism-driven world, far removed, ever more removed from where we came from. And we treat our planet with absolute disdain. It's probable that we're the only beacon of life and hope in an abyss of a dark universe. And we're so privileged, every single one of us, to be alive on this planet now. And all we do, right, is go for violence every time. NATO's been caught with its pants down. It's just realised it's chased the wrong rabbit down the hole, which is Russia.
Jason.
It's like just first point and come back. It's like having two gunfighters, yeah? They both fire all their bullets.
But we were talking about octopi.
Armaments, and then the third gunfighter steps up, which is China, with his gun fully loaded. What are you going to do now? So we realise how stupid we've been. We're armament-wise, we've exhausted the majority of our armament reserves in fighting a futile war instead of going for peace. And now China picks the perfect moment to break the back of NATO over two fronts and flexes its muscles.
Well, I mean, what China said was he thought there were a couple of things. One, we were talking about octopus farms, but I like the sort of jazz segue you've done here. Two, China has said to Russia, I don't think it's a very good idea that you put battlefield nuclear weapons in Belarus. And so that's not right then. Okay. So therefore,
China is basically doing two things. It's using this situation, like I say, because everybody's weakened themselves. China stands up fully strong and fully loaded, right? And China does not want war. China wants peace.
Yeah,
it's not in China's interest for Russia to totally capitulate and turn to the West on its knees. Nor is it in China's interest for a outright NATO expansion as is happening, and for Ukraine to win. China is trying to play the game and force peace. China wants peace because it's good for business. Nuclear war, as stated before, is bad for business. So China wants peace, but China's been very shrewd. China's playing up around Japan now, and also causing worry over Taiwan as predicted. That's all it has to do, because it's chased the wrong rabbit down the rabbit hole. Russia could not do world domination. Russia is struggling in a conventional war.
And
the rhetoric
we were talking about octopus, Jason.
Octopus?
Yeah.
All right, okay. Well, octopus, let's just go to this. Octopi, plural. Right?
No, we checked this out. It's according to the Oxford Dictionary, it's octopuses, but anyway, there you go.
All right, okay. But it just basically highlights what I'm saying, the cruelty.
Right.
A highly intelligent, it's the intellectual quarter of their being, isn't it? There's two things. The dolphins have it. So it just highlights the cruelty that we think that we can make ourselves God. Yes, I eat meat like you, right? But when we stand back and we look at it, right, this is the cruelty. We've made ourselves king and lord over everything else.
Jason.
And we think that we can abuse and be cruel to nature without any repercussions to ourselves. The genetically modified food now, all this road we're going down, where we think we can play God. But one day there will be a price to pay, because one day we'll overlook something. And wouldn't it be ironic, just at the last minute, that we realised that everything was connected? The evidence coming out of the CERN collider is that there's a force of nature, something that might connect us all. Everything.
Jason, thanks for the call in there. As always, good to hear from you. The squid shall inherit the earth. Right then, yes, Ros.
Well, I agree with Jason, because David Attenborough has already exclaimed that from 1970 to now, the percentage of beings other than human has gone down to 4%. From 69% to 4%. We've killed them all. Now, I think it's not going to be all that long before AI intelligence realizes that we're not worth.
Anyway, we're talking about let's not look.
We're not worth the life we live in. Okay, well, I'd rather go back to standing up for octopuses. The torture chamber that is being established in Spain, and suggest that if people would please watch this film, it's on Netflix and probably other places.
Else,
My Octopus Teacher, highly recommend it. And once you're aware of these wonderful beings,
it did. We
try to protect them.
Pulpo Galego, calamares. It did actually. A lot of people were on about, and they do think, hang on a second, this is perhaps if you said I've got a lovely bit of dolphin burger, people would be absolutely upset and scream and send it back. So why not? Why should we not look at? Octopuses only live for a year.
That was a real shock to me. Yes.
What about the big ones, or is that they just squid?
No, only a year.
Only a year.
I don't understand this. How they could be so highly developed, and yet they wouldn't have developed the capacity to have want. Or
they just don't want
or desire a longer life. I know. They've done enough of this.
Exactly. After a year of doing Viewpoint, I should imagine they would be. Because mind you, they'd be good on the faders. Morning, calling live on TRE. What's your name? Where are you calling from? What's your viewpoint, please?
Yes, good afternoon. I was going to go out for calamaris and chips for dinner.
Exactly.
You put me right off it.
Exactly.
That's the whole idea.
Exactly.
Six of them with chips.
Just have the chips. Go with the chips.
6 squid, yes.
I'll take you eat fish, though. What about the poor fish?
No, not much. Less and less fish, really.
Not much, though. Less and less.
No.
All right.
Hardly any fish. Once a month.
I can't wait till they bring out this false meat.
Yes.
I want to try some of this false meat.
Who needs false meat? You just eat vegetables and fruit.
No, you can't do that. The body
yes, you
can't take it.
Yes, you can.
No, not enough protein. And anyway, with regards to the last caller,
yes.
China's not an aggressive nation, etc., or by intimation there. I suggest you'd speak to the Uyghurs and the Tibetans.
Yes.
We're going back in time. If you look at history, we've gone back in time, and we're going to George Orwell's time when you got the 4 spheres of influence. America, Russia, China, and the 4th one where the battles are taking place. We've gone back in time. So, and with regards, someone made the comment,
yes.
It's obviously about the Americans. Someone once said to me, can you have too much? But the problem with America is it's got too much freedom, and that's the problem.
Ooh, Gary.
Too much freedom, and that's it. And I'm just glad that Florida shooter. I'm just glad she or he wasn't misgendered. That's the good thing about it.
Thank you very much, Gary. As enjoy your lunch. 952 78 4000. A quick break and then back with more Viewpoint.
Viewpoint on Talk Radio Europe with Giles Brown.
Yes, indeed. Always live. We're into that mythical 5.5 minutes where the phones go wild. So, Ros, you got 5 minutes. Off you go.
Well, I thought we should finish off with menopause.
Okay.
Because Spain is the first country in Europe to legalize 5 days a month for women to have paid leave every month. Now, this has been legal in Japan and Thailand for quite some time, but the women don't dare go in and demand it or ask for it.
Right.
But now this, I'd just like to point out, in my opinion, this is one step forward, 2 steps back. This is not benefiting women in any possible way, because it gives men another excuse, or employers another excuse not to hire women. You can't depend on them being 5 days a month is a lot. Women have been putting up with these issues. Why can't they just take their annual leave or their medical leave? But don't make it a right for women. This is not helping women's rights at all.
I mean, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I often am, but are men allowed in Spain to take paternity as well? Is that a Spanish thing? Or?
I think they are.
Yeah.
Yes, I think men can.
But you think that this would actually discriminate more against women?
Of course it will. Of course it will. Absolutely. I don't think women need this. This is not a step forward. What we want is equal pay for equal work. We want equal opportunities. We want positions in management. We want positions as directors of companies. This is where it's important that, because as more and more women are sort of benefiting from a university education or the educational system, we have to have the positions. And the problem is, the bottom line, women are still being paid 20 to 30% less than men. Now, if they're only showing up for 25 days out of 30, that's what they deserve.
Yeah, but the thing is,
this is a mistake.
The viewpoint you can say is, listen. I may not need to take that time off, but at least it's know that if it does sort of poleaxe me, then I'm covered in this situation.
Take your medical leave. Don't have special leave available for women because we're so special. Step back.
952 78 4000. Morning, caller. You're live on TRE. What's your name? Where are you calling from? What's your viewpoint, please?
Charles, Peter again.
Yeah, Peter.
Just quickly, I missed the last 30, 40 seconds. So you don't need maternity leave. Men have an andropause. We produce testosterone, same as women produce estrogen. When we get later in life, we stop producing it. We go through the andropause rather than menopause.
Right.
It's no different. The only difference is we don't jump up and down and scream about it.
Oh, yes, you do. Grumpy old men. What about all the grumpy old men around? I face them all the time when I'm driving my car.
Rosalind, I'm not saying they don't.
And they're not even that old.
I'm not saying they don't exist. I'm not saying there's no such thing as a grumpy old man. What I'm saying is we don't tend to blame it on the andropause. The andropause is a real thing. So if they're going to give women time off, they should offer it to the men. We live in a time where gender is a social construct. So there's no such thing as a man or woman. So if I want to take 5 days off from my menopause, I will, whether I have a menopause or not.
Right.
Because gender is a social construct. Simple.
Peter, as always, in the last 2 minutes, but thank you for that. That indeed, and your content, your contribution to today's show. Ros.
Just to say that we are equal but different. So that's also still, people don't understand that we don't have to be the same as men. We are different, but we're equal. Equal, that's all we want. To be equal and different.
Equal but different.
Most important is to be paid the same as man. If you're doing the same job, be paid the same. But don't give extra leave for menopause or menstrual problems every month. 2 or 3 days a month off legitimately for that.
Oh, they used to be. I mean, back in the 90s, they had what we called duvet days. That was if you're just having sort of it was all too much. Just a very quick one. Hopefully it's on track with what we're talking about. Want to call you live on TRE. What's your name? Where are you calling from? What's your viewpoint, please?
Hello, John from Estepona. Just a quickie.
Yeah.
Octopus.
Yes.
2 to 15 years.
2 to 15 years.
Their lifespan, yeah. And you can ask Alexa to confirm it.
All right, then. We can ask Alexa to confirm it, but great. Thank you very much for that one. And will you be having calamaris for lunch? I think not.
I think that as well.
All right, thanks for the call in there. 952 No, thanks very much. 952 78 4000. The phone number, studio@tre.radio, is the email. Unfortunately, we're almost out of time. It's been my pleasure and my privilege to bring you. Roz is looking to the back.
Well, I did look it up before.
Well, I think they made like a lot, like, they're not like mayflies.
But that's why I was so shocked.
Exactly.
But I'm going to check it again.
Otherwise, Aquarium, what about the octopus who was doing the World Cup draw a while back? I mean, he was no young spring chicken of the octopus world. Anyway, we're almost out of time. It has been my pleasure and my privilege to bring you today's viewpoint, this wide-ranging viewpoint. And thank you for all your contributions in today. My thanks to my guest, Rosalind Scott Gibb.
Thank you, Giles. A pleasure, as always.
Got through that one, didn't we? Relatively unscathed. This show will be repeated at 7 o'clock this evening. Have a great rest of your Tuesday, the 28th of March. And Stephen Ritson and Europe Today is up next. Have a great rest of... Oh, just one more thing. Come on, Ros.
Thank you to the call-ins who were mostly very polite to the guests today.
Exactly. May it lay like continue.
Yeah, we're grateful for that.
Right then. Okay, this show will be repeated at 7 o'clock. You cordial lots. I'll see you tomorrow with Let's Talk from 10 o'clock. Stephen Ritson is up next.
The views expressed on Viewpoint by invited studio guests and callers do not constitute an opinion endorsed in any way by Talk Radio Europe.
You've been listening to a TRE production. If you've enjoyed this program, there'll be another episode waiting for you next week, right here on this platform, where you can also access our extensive back catalogue of shows and interviews. For more information on our live programming, social media channels and apps, and how to contact Talk Radio Europe, please visit tre.radio.